Hello, everybody, and welcome to WordCast number 78. Once again, got the number right this time. So every time I got to be a little happier about that until I make a mistake again. So
I don't think you mentioned it last episode.
I might not have if I didn't. You guys should yell at me in the comments down below. I think that's a good idea. So thank you, everybody that's joining us, though. And obviously, we've got Mr. Daniel, or whatever his name is here. Hello,
I'm
Daniel.
Mr. Daniel now. I expect everyone to call me that for the rest of their lives.
That's your name, Mr. Daniel? I kind of like it.
I don't.
Oh, all right. Well, I'm going to call you that then. So we've got a pretty good podcast for you guys coming today, and we may actually end up having one later this week about some other stuff, so stay tuned for that. And this week we are going over, of course, Samsung's Unpacked event, going over all the Galaxy news and fun stuff that's happening, including the terrible prices. And then we've got some stuff about Apple's App Store policies and also some interesting news about AMD. So should be a relatively good week.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Very yes. So
go ahead and jump right into it, as Philip Franco would say.
What if I want to sit right into it?
He doesn't say that, so I don't know.
Can I say that?
If you want that to be your thing from now on, I'm gonna sit right into it.
I'm gonna sit right on it. I'm gonna sit on your face. Wait, sorry, that got really weird too quick.
And demonetized.
Hey, whatever. No big deal.
What a stupid joke to get demonetized over, though.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Yeah, but you know what? I'm okay with it. So, hello everybody once again, and we've got the Galaxy Note 20. You okay there, Daniel?
Sure, your mom this episode.
Mr. Daniel. So, we've got the Galaxy Note 20. That's the thing I'll start with first. The Note 20 and the Note 20 Ultra. And I'm actually very disappointed on a lot of fronts here. I expected a lot better from Samsung. So I'm going to start with... Why? I guess that's a good point. Yeah. Okay, so anyway, so we'll start with the Note 20, which is the bigger disappointment here, in my opinion. So it's a $1,000 phone, which is not unprecedented, obviously, for the Note series. However... if we're comparing it to the standard S20 lineup, it does have a worse camera, so that's already kind of bad. It does have the S Pen, but the S Pen is not as good as the S Pen in the Ultra, which we'll get to in a bit. But it's got better latency than the S Pen from the previous Notes, but not as good as the Ultra. It's made out of plastic. Yeah, you heard me right. It's a $1,000 phone. It's made out of plastic and has a 1080p 60 hertz display. Right off the bat there, that is absolutely terrible. I don't really understand the reason to price it that way. Maybe it's so that they can sell it to carriers for cheap to increase carrier profit or something, but
well, the other thing is that Samsung phones always go on sale, so nobody should buy this at launch. If you really want this phone,
that's a good point.
Wait 3 months and it will probably be $750.
Yeah, because at $750 it would make a lot more sense. Like, as is, it's honestly pretty bad.
Yeah. Also, while the latency is higher on the S Pen, it is lower than the previous phone.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. It's lower than the previous Note series, but not as good as the Ultra. And so it's also not as good as the Apple Pencil.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, the S Pen is kind of useless on a phone.
You also can't use the Apple Pencil on a phone.
Yeah, that's true. But I've never found the S Pen very good on phones. Like, it's just too small of a screen to be that much of a benefit, in my opinion, and I'd take a bigger battery instead. And I've always been a Note fan, but I never really cared for the pen. I just liked them because they were bigger.
I'm surprised that you said bigger battery and not headphone jack.
So I've kind of gotten over the headphone jack thing. And
yeah, but I'm just saying, like, if the space is already there, you could realistically have a slightly bigger battery and a headphone jack in the same amount of space as the stylus.
This is true. Yeah. And they could bring that headphone jack back, which, like, don't get me wrong, I prefer it. I've just gotten over it because at this point, I mean, everybody's just using Bluetooth headphones, and you might as well get an external like portable amplifier if you want to use really good headphones on the go that are wired, so
or buy an LG phone.
What was that?
Or buy an LG phone, since they like using good decks.
Yeah, that's that. Yeah, even then, though, they're not as good as some of the other portable ones you can get from, like, FiO and stuff.
Yeah, but I'm just
they're
saying,
better than the garbage that's put in most
if you're wanting an integrated one.
Yeah, or, well, there's Razers with their actually decent dongle for their USB-C dongle. That one's pretty nice, pretty good built-in DAC.
I did just say integrated.
I know, but So now to move on to the Note 20 Ultra, I am very disappointed in it for one reason. But before I get to that reason, I will first explain that it is running the Snapdragon 865 Plus, so it's a beast. It does have obviously a excess of power, kind of unnecessary though at this point to have something like an 865 Plus. It's obviously waterproof. It's bigger. It's made out of metal. It's kind of a S20, what you would expect an S20 Ultra, but turned into a Note would look like and would behave like. There's nothing too amazing on it. Its zoom is only half that of the S20 Ultra, so it's 50 times instead of 100 times. But I mean, even the zoom like sucks on both of them anyway.
Yeah, I want to jump in real quick on the 865 Plus thing.
Yeah.
I sort of disagree. So one of the other announcements that has come out recently about Samsung, this wasn't specifically just announced in Unpacked, but
yeah,
they are planning on doing 3 generations of updates. So essentially 3 years-ish of updates now instead of 2. And Android phones already have had the problem of being a bit slower after 2 years of updates.
Okay, that's true.
And so with 3, yes, there's a lot of headroom for right now.
Yeah.
But that's going to be, it's still probably going to end up being headroom in 3 years, but not a lot. And so
But
I
at
think
least
that
there's
that's
something there. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think that's really important, is that for Android phones that are looking at getting more updates, you're going to start needing to look at hardware differently, where people already looked at like, oh, I want the 865 because it's the best thing. I need the fastest, which was
Yes, of course.
unnecessary. Whereas, and that's one of the benefits of what Apple does with having such powerful hardware. Compared to the 865 Plus, the A13 is still way better. But that's going to last you 5-6 years if you choose to go that route. And so
Yeah.
it needs to be better. It needs to have headroom, because if they add features, like the old iPhone SE is getting the current update, but it does struggle a little bit with widgets and stuff, at least in the
That's
current
true.
betas. Now,
Yeah.
obviously, optimization is the last thing they focus on. But when you're looking, what is Android going to have in 3 years that might need a little bit more performance, especially since Google can also shove stuff in through Google Play services.
Right.
And so you're going to need some extra headroom.
I guess that's a good point. On something that's more premium that somebody is going to keep a long time, I guess I'm still in the mindset of replacing a phone every year or 6 months even.
Yeah, but you're abnormal.
Well, I am. I would say in the Android world that's not abnormal, but it's abnormal to do it with the
Yes, it
higher end
is.
phones. To do it with the higher end phones.
No, it's still abnormal, even on low-end phones. I
Yeah.
worked in the cell phone industry. That is not common.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. I guess to that extent though, keeping updates for 3 years, what you were mentioning there, is pretty impressive. It's still nothing like what Apple's doing, really. It's not 5 or 6 years out, but 3 years is still something.
I also wonder if that's something we're going to see come from other phone makers soon, because realistically, the limitation on 2 years was not because of the individual phone maker. There's a
Yeah.
reason that no phone manufacturer had opted to do that before.
Right.
It's not because all of them just agreed they didn't want to do it. It's because Qualcomm wasn't giving them the code to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Qualcomm has to update stuff first.
Right. Right.
And
And
so,
then topping that off with the issues with delivering it via carriers and stuff like that.
yeah.
There's
So like
yeah.
if any of the Android phone makers was going to get priority from Qualcomm on a change that Qualcomm is doing lineup wide, it would be Samsung, because they're the biggest Android phone maker.
Yeah.
And so my assumption is that what's going to happen is that eventually Qualcomm in general is going to be doing 3 years or 3 generations of software updates.
Yeah.
And that will slowly make its way to more and more of the lineup, which Google is trying to push really hard to at least get another year-ish out of updates.
That's true. Yeah.
Because they know that is a big reason people will buy iPhones over Android phones, especially in the budget market.
Yes.
If you can buy a $400 iPhone that's going to last you 6 years and perform reasonably well, because the $400 phone comes with the newest processor.
Well, I mean, heck, even like 3 years is still better than what the other.
Like if you look at if you look at an iPhone SE that you buy this year, the newest model with an A13, and you look at that 5 years from now versus an Android phone 2.5 years from now.
Yeah.
The iPhone 5 years from now is going to perform better, which means it was a way, way better value for the money compared to something like a Pixel 4a.
This is true. Yeah, that's a good point. And I don't know, with this promise of 3 years of updates, I still wonder like how quickly they're going to get the updates, which I know was something that you had mentioned.
Yes.
And it's like, if they have to deliver it through the carriers and stuff still, and even taking that out of the fact, I mean, they've never been as quick with updates, right? And so it makes me wonder, like, are you going to be, okay, 3 years of updates, but are you 7 months behind,
Yeah. Now that being said, so there is some moves Google is doing. Every version of Android for the last several years has
Yeah,
had new features that make future updates faster.
right.
And while their numbers still sound ridiculous compared to iOS, it is getting much better. And if they can compound on that, and if they can have updates continually get better on that front, make it easier to do the update and get Qualcomm to support the code better,
Yeah, yeah,
then I think we could reasonably get to a point where in 6 months, instead of it being, uh, 5 or 10% at best of Android phones having updates, we probably could get to a point where it's like 25% of the mid to high range phones have the updates in 6 months, and then 10 or 15% of the like super low budget phones, which I do think should be kind of counted separately, because like
yeah,
the super low budget phones being sent to um, markets like India and stuff, they don't necessarily need updates in the same way. That's
right.
not what their market cares about, and they don't really. When you're talking $100 or $200 phones, you're not really competing with Apple either. So while fast
Yeah,
updates are nice, they're not as necessary for phone sales.
right, right. I mean, that's a lower. They're not going to invest the same kind of money into that for sure.
Yeah. But
And
anything they can do to make the 3 years of updates and faster updates is good.
yeah,
And I think that this is just a start of a trend we'll see on Android.
I think so too. Hear me out on this though. I want to get your thoughts. Do you think that the direction that Google has been pushing Android to try and get it to have more updates has been part of what stifled the rapid change and innovation, or do you think it's something else? Because I feel like Android has felt very boring and dull and nothing new for about 3-4 years now. There's been stuff, but I mean, like, it hasn't been the significant updates that it was before that,
I
and
think
Apple
that
is still pushing it out.
the difference though is Google pushed really hard on features,
Yeah,
but didn't push very hard on stability
yeah,
and on user experience. And
right.
Apple pushed really hard on user experience and stability
Hmm.
and didn't push super hard on features. Now, there were some things that they had way before Android,
Yeah,
but there was a lot of things that they didn't, and they're just now getting to because they found the way to do it that fits that like Apple consistency. Like with widgets, for example, um, they have the stackable widgets, but they're much more simplistic widgets. So there's these trade-offs that Apple makes when they do these decisions, whereas Google just goes hard on new features when they have an idea, but they're usually problematic. And so they've spent the last several years. I don't think it's been more so updates that have been the reason they've slowed down on new features. I think it's been fixing their platform.
I guess so. Yeah, that makes sense. And I guess that's part of what's made Android in some ways boring to me. Is I've actually felt, people that watch the channel consistently know I switched to iPhone fairly recently, and I've been happier with it. And I guess some of that comes down to obviously is spending a lot of time in apps, and the apps developed for the App Store are just better. But
Mhm.
some of that comes from, I feel like Apple in a lot of ways actually has more interesting features that are also implemented better than what Google's been pushing around. And
Yeah,
so I guess
and
that's a good point. And I
that's
hope
the other
Google can
thing.
focus on features at some point again, though.
Yeah, but it's like that's the other thing. While Apple had obvious features they needed to implement
Yes.
because they were behind on widgets and things like that.
Or like, notifications back when they didn't have that.
Yeah, like what does Google have? Like Google doesn't have like glaringly obvious features they need to implement. The biggest one I
That's
would say
exactly what
would
I
have.
mean, though. Is that Google doesn't have, like, they don't have glaringly obvious features to. And what I mean is they're not coming up with new ones, and they used to, and then Apple and them would
I
copy
mean,
it
they
later.
didn't used to though. What feature did Google come up with?
I mean, I wouldn't be able
Widgets
to.
were a thing on Mac OS. Like that's not particularly
Yeah, but
new,
you,
like
you kind of
unique
get
to
what I
Android.
mean. I mean, I feel like there was more stuff happening at the time where Google was trying to do more interesting stuff with the platform. And now it's just, I feel like every update has been just, oh, better updates, and Google Assistant's gotten better.
I think that's just more so because there just is less that is good, that would be good for a phone that they can just put in.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm saying those things have to be invented, right? I'm not saying that
No,
there's
I know,
things that we know
that.
of
I'm
that are
saying
missing.
of what we could invent that would work well for a phone. I just don't think there probably is a whole lot.
But
Like,
we don't know what
there's
we could
only
invent. That's the point of inventing.
okay, but that's not a helpful conversation to have. Is oh, they should just make up something because they should. Like, we need, we can't really talk about whether or not there would be a good new potential features without
Well,
some
right,
kind of
right. I'm just
idea.
saying they
Like,
haven't
is
done
there
anything.
anything that as you use the phone you think should be improved upon? If not, like then, like realistically, like most people would probably say on Android, stability. Um,
Stability, messages is a huge one, of course. Their messaging still is terrible.
well, yeah, but Google doesn't know what they're doing with
I
messages.
guess I guess maybe that's part of what it comes from is Google just they kill stuff so fast, and maybe that's why in some ways it feels like there hasn't been as much interesting stuff, is because everything they put out there they either do or I worry that they will kill.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I feel like mobile phone operating systems are relatively mature at this point, and with
Yeah.
any OS, I mean, you look at Windows even over the last several years or last several versions, even from XP to 10, they
Hmm.
haven't added that many like big features.
I would
It
say they
was
have. I would say there's been a lot of change. I
there's been a
mean,
lot of
but
visual change
well, not just visual change. I mean, there's been a lot of stuff. I mean, the
for consumers. I'm not talking for like
yeah, I guess so.
niche
Yeah.
situations. Because that's the thing is Google isn't focused on niche situations. They're focused
Hmm.
on the billion users.
Yeah, yeah, I suppose.
Um, Whereas iOS had features that they were definitely lacking in comparison to
Yeah. And I
Android.
guess
Now that
that's
was
what's changed. Yeah, is like Android was doing so much different, and now that Apple is kind of caught up with that, because then the Apple philosophy around trying to make things more stable and easier to use is more beneficial when there aren't all these new features that Android has. So
mhm.
I guess Google's only option is to try and focus on stability, reliability, updates, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, and then also like if we want to talk about innovation, and this gets into the next product we were going to talk about, like there is something big that Google has been working on at an OS level, and
True.
that is foldable phones.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's just not something that you're going to see on a non-foldable phone.
Right, right. I have odd opinions about foldable phones and screens that large, though. And I
I
guess,
dig them. I just think that the issue is that because Google did a bad job with tablet support in the past and getting
hmm,
developers to make tablet apps, that despite them being ahead on OS development and phone development, Apple will have an inherent advantage when they decide to release a similar product if they do in a few years.
yeah, because they
Because
already have
Apple will
so
have
many apps for big screens.
especially with Apple Silicon Macs, where they're literally getting
Yeah,
developers to design apps that will work across all sorts of hardware and screen size with one code base,
right.
they will have such an advantage over Google.
That's a good point. That's a good point. And what this leads into is the Galaxy Z Fold 2, because they had to add a Z in there for whatever reason. Now the price is unknown, but people are guessing 2,000 or higher.
That's my guess too.
Yeah,
My guess is
yeah.
2,000. I think that they would want to price it higher, but I think that 2,000 is the
Kind of the
we can
limit.
get super power users and YouTubers to buy this phone
Yeah.
price limit.
Yeah, I think so too. You start reaching 2,500, nobody is going to buy it even if they're passionate about it.
Yeah, because like realistically, if you're super hardcore into Android and you're already looking at buying like let's say a Note 20 Ultra,
Yeah.
okay, you're spending $1,200, and you also might want a tablet. Even if you get a relatively mediocre Samsung tablet, you're looking at $500-$600. So 2,000 to get
Yeah.
both in one product is it's
Uh,
still extremely expensive, but it's not unrealistic or it's not unreasonable for the two products that you're getting in one.
that's true. That's true. And that's why I feel like foldables do have obviously a big advantage there. So a couple things to touch on too is so the front finally has a big screen. So the front side of it's more usable as a normal phone, is a 6.2-inch display at 2260 by 18 by 816.
And it doesn't
Um
look stupid anymore. The
yeah.
previous phone looked kind of dumb
Oh,
with
it looked
the
bad.
small phone
Yeah.
screen.
Yeah, it was pretty gross actually. I was pretty disappointed in it.
Yeah.
So this looks actually usable now as a phone without having to unfold it. Now, what I will say is you know, well, I'll get the bigger the inside screen. I'll talk about that first. So 7.6-inch display on the inside, so it's pretty huge at 2208 by 1768 resolution. and at 120 hertz. And as far as I understand, the 120 hertz is at that resolution consistently. Unlike the Note 20 Ultra that for whatever reason can only do 1440 at 120, or sorry,
Why?
at 60 or 1080 at 120, which like 1080 at 120 on a phone as expensive as the Note 20 Ultra just makes me like want to puke. That's horrible.
Mike, and this actually does make me think that it's deliberate by Samsung.
Yeah.
As much as we like to talk about the S20 Ultra as like a power user product,
Yeah.
or the Note 20 Ultra,
Right, right.
it's a mainstream product.
I guess that's true, but
Like relatively, well off normies buy the
yeah,
Note line.
that's true.
The Fold lineup is still an extremely power user focused device.
That's
The people
true. Yeah.
almost I would argue almost every single person buying the Fold 2 is going to notice if it had a 120 hertz screen and didn't run at full resolution at 120 hertz because they would check that stuff. Whereas,
Normal users just don't.
yeah, and from
Yeah.
from my experience when I did work with cell phone, in the cell phone industry more, most of the people buying the Note lineup, even the most expensive top tier storage, dropping absurd amounts of money on phones, wouldn't notice that stuff.
Yeah. I suppose that's true. I guess what bugs me though a lot of times about these features that sometimes the excuse is we don't want to add that feature because normal people aren't going to care. Always makes me in the back of my head think, okay, then just add it in a different settings section that's harder to get to. Like, so a great example of that is like Windows 10 and its updates, right? Like,
Mhm.
why do we have to go through all this rigmarole as a power user in terms of registry edits and group policy edits to prevent those updates when they could just put it in like the developer options section of a settings app or something like that, where it's like only the power users, like we obviously want normal users to get auto updates, but then the power users can turn it off when they need to.
So in the case of that, I actually think that's a little bit more reasonable than something like the resolution
Mm-hmm.
situation, because a normal user, if they want to disable the updates and they don't see it in the update section, they're
They'll
gonna
look a
do
lot
just they'll just
online.
do a Google search, and if it's still extremely easy to do,
Yeah,
they'll just
that's a good
do it.
point.
That's not stopping them. And also, if you search the settings on Windows, you'd still find it even if it was in developer settings.
Yeah, that's true.
Um, Unless they opted to start doing something like how Android used or does hide developer settings behind like weird button taps.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and so like for that situation, it's not if you just hide it behind developer settings, it's not like uh prohibitive in doing it.
yeah, that's
Whereas
true.
having to do registry edits will scare people out of doing it.
Right.
And Microsoft would much rather piss off a few power users who don't have another OS to go to, um, than they would have people who don't know better disable updates and miss security updates that Microsoft then gets blamed for people getting compromised.
Yeah, okay, that's a good point. But you get what I was
Whereas this
getting at though with
resolution
the
thing,
displays.
yeah,
Yeah, like I feel like they should just have a tick box hidden in developer options or something for it. Because the display can probably do it. And maybe though, maybe part of it is they're worried about battery and not battery life, but I mean battery in terms of output, in terms of amperage and getting too hot and stuff like that. Maybe that's, I don't know, just a thought.
yeah, that could be it actually, because Samsung would, of all companies, be much more concerned about that and like be much more careful, seeing
Yeah.
as how the Note lineup of all phone lineups was a bomb.
Yes, yes, exactly. So, I don't know. Yeah, I think that's the only logical reason I can really think of for it. But maybe they're just being stupid too.
Yeah,
But back to the Z Fold, and apologies to
yeah.
everybody for my
Well,
dog barking.
it's always okay when dogs bark in podcasts.
It's true.
Everyone's okay with that.
Everybody's like, "Oh,
Um,
doggy."
Getting into it though, also like since we don't know when this is releasing, I'm wondering if it's that they just expect that the displays will be like, or the ones that are they're prepping for this are a little bit more matured than the ones that they're prepping for the Note 20. Because like, yes,
Mm,
you can make 1440p 120 hertz displays, but it's still not something that's like easy for
yeah, that's
phone
true.
makers to do.
Yeah.
Um, and so like the thing that makes me think that is like the next feature we're going to talk about is that the Z Fold 2 has Wi-Fi 6E, which is I think one of the if not the first phones to be announced with that feature.
It is. I believe it's the first one. Yeah.
Um, and I don't think that probably means it's not coming in the next couple of months.
Yeah.
Because Wi-Fi 6E was just recently like finalized.
Yeah,
because
yeah, it
it was
was.
just recently allowed by the FCC.
Yeah, there's no
Um,
like, there's no Wi-Fi points that can output 6E yet.
yeah, and
Yeah,
so like my guess is this is an end of the year phone, and they have time to mature that. And then the other
and
thing
that's
is
why we
that
don't know the price yet either.
if this
Yeah,
is a $2,000 phone, they're probably not super concerned about yields.
yeah, that's true
Whereas
too.
on a $1,200 phone that will no doubt get price dropped much faster than the Z Fold 2,
Right.
they have to be concerned about yields of the displays.
And I'm not gonna lie, in some ways I do want the Z Fold too.
Oh
But
yeah, if I
yeah,
was to go back to Android, it would be for a foldable.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Same here. Now here's the thing though. Here's my interesting thought about the foldable, right? So I like the idea of foldables. A lot of it though is just because I like a bigger screen, and the way that the Z Fold is designed is it's still two-handable, typable as a big screen because it's still not like as wide as something like an iPad, right? And
Yeah,
so
well, my guess with how Apple would do it is it would be an iPad, it would be like an iPhone 11 Pro Max that opens up into like an iPad Mini.
yeah, yeah. And so the thing about this is like I actually don't like the idea of such a big screen for multitasking. Multitasking on phones is still a joke. And even on tablets, if you don't have a dedicated keyboard, is still a joke because the keyboard has to take up a lot of space. And
I disagree
so,
with that though because there's plenty of multitasking situations that don't need a keyboard.
name some because I've never been able to find one myself that I would actually want to use. Obviously, you can open up like two videos or something. I suppose reading and like watching a video at the same time, but then you're not really watching the video.
I mean, you can have like a video up with like informational stuff as you're like reading through an article that like is related, but not really getting to that. Like I've had situations where like I've, for example, been playing a game on my iPad while having a related article about the game, a wiki open. Um,
Yeah, but that's on your iPad when you're using a
yes,
keyboard, a desktop keyboard. Otherwise, you would have to play.
no, no, it's called using a touchscreen to play the game
Huh. Yeah,
because
I just feel like it's kind of a
that
niche
some phones have
area.
touchscreens.
And
Oh, no
so,
doubt,
yeah,
but
yeah.
so is like multitasking in general on devices, like mobile devices, is relatively niche. It's not like a normal thing that people, other than like
Hmm.
audio in an article or
Yeah.
video and one other thing.
And
But like even like documents and a web page is still not something that like most people I know that have tablets do.
yeah.
Um, and then getting into that deeper, it's really uncommon on phones as much as Samsung likes to push the idea.
Yeah, yeah, and I guess
Um,
what I'm getting at here, I guess, is in comparison to something like the Surface Duo, right? Where the Surface Duo is, two screens, right? It's a phone, two screens, instead of a
yeah,
folding
it's not
screen.
a. I hate that people call it a foldable. It's not a foldable.
Yeah, it's not really foldable, but what's weird about that to me is because if you're using that to multitask, because that's one of the big advertised things about it, it's like okay, either you have it in landscape mode, you're using an entire half of the phone for typing, and then the other half is for whatever you're looking at, so you're still kind of single tasking,
I mean,
or
there's
go ahead.
good.
Or you are like what do? You have an article on the left side, you have the keyboard like half size or quarter size of the screen that's really hard to type on, or you have the keyboard covering half the screen again, like half of both screens.
Yeah. Now I feel like um for the Surface Duo, the problem is actually worse than on something like this Z Fold 2. Because like for the Z Fold 2, you could still reasonably have, let's say the bottom half of the opened up screen is the
Yeah,
keyboard in any
yeah, yeah.
orientation.
Whereas you really
And then you
couldn't
could
in
have, yeah, and then you could have an article on one half and a document on the other half, and you could still reasonably type well on that with how much, even if it's only
yeah.
a quarter of the screen, that's still a few inches. That's still your BlackBerry's screen size worth of screen real estate.
No, that's true. That's true. Yeah. And so I think it's so what I guess my thing that I get at though is like the way I would see myself using this is something like messaging and stuff like that, having full screen apps, but just having a bigger screen. And so I'd obviously have to feel it in hand first to see if I feel like it's too wide to type with thumbs. But
Mhm.
normally I like something bigger to type on, so I think I would enjoy it. And like in some ways, if I'm being honest, like I mean, I would really miss obviously Apple's ecosystem and stuff, but this is the kind of phone that would make me consider switching back.
Yeah, my concern would just be the app support.
Yeah, yeah, that would be a that would be a that would be a
Like
problem.
I really wish that all the way going back to fucking, what was it, Honeycomb on the Motorola Zoom,
Yeah, I remember
that
that.
Google would have taken tablets more seriously. Because I had a Motorola Zoom. It was great for what it was, but
Yeah.
it's just they never put in the work to get the apps there.
Yeah, I was a
Um,
Zoom user as well. That was my first tablet experience.
yeah,
And then I
like
switched to iPad and realized how much better it was, even at that
yeah,
time.
and like that's really what it comes down to is Apple got developers to adopt the layout for apps, and
Yeah.
it's Google's never been as good at getting apps to be optimized for their device, and that's just going to come with the nature. Like that's not necessarily a Google thing. Google has to do more work than Apple
Right.
because Google has more devices than Apple running its OS, and
Yep.
it's inherently more complicated.
Yeah.
Um, but if Google's going to sell these devices, or not sell because they don't sell all this stuff, but if Google is going to push these devices and push new form factors like foldables, which they are, they're
Yeah.
specifically updating and working on Android for it. They need to get at least the big developers on board.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And I don't know. We'll just see when it comes out because it's kind of intriguing to me.
Yeah,
But
I
I don't
I
know.
I would love if like between Google and Samsung, they just said screw it, we're going to pay app developers to get support for this because that's what it needs is just the apps.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
It's the biggest thing holding back foldables, I think. I mean, we'll have to see how the durability is, but
Hmm.
with supposedly improved durability, and with the improved design, and
Well,
with
and
the
the
improved
bigger screen on the
hardware,
outside makes it so that the inside durability doesn't matter quite as much, too,
yeah,
because
you're
you
gonna,
don't have to open it every time you want to do literally anything.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, we'll see. I think that we're reaching a point now where, like, this to me feels like Gen 1 of the hardware, whereas the previous Z Fold felt like the beta.
Yeah, completely agree. Yeah, I had no interest in the previous Z Fold. Yeah, I felt like a beta. So I don't know. We'll see when this comes out. I feel like still the biggest thing that would keep me from wanting to leave iPhone again would be iMessage being so freaking good.
Mhm.
But I don't know. We'll see if Google ever gets their messaging, fixed. Because they've been trying to do that for 7 years now. So,
Yeah.
and going through iterations of the way they implement Hangouts or the way they implement Allo or the way they implement messages and, the drastic changes that Hangouts had where they added features that made it almost as good and then removed features is just disgusting. Oh man. Um okay, so then the last thing from Unpacked is the Galaxy Beans. So these are the Galaxy Buds Live, but we're all just gonna call them Galaxy Beans because they look like beans. Now these are interesting. There's some inherent issues with them. So the first thing I'll get at is they're $170. So they're more expensive than AirPods, but they're less expensive than the Pro, obviously. They look really weird. They do look like a bean. I'll put some footage up of them. They're very odd design wise. And they're only IPX2 rated, which is something that does bother me because they're basically good enough to like use in the rain, but even then with an
In my
X2,
opinion, that's perfectly fine. The point of having that rating is just for sweat resistance.
yeah.
And in my opinion, for headphones, like sweat and rain is all you need.
I would feel sketched out with this rating using them in the rain though. IPX3? No, but 2? Yeah.
Mhm.
I don't feel like I need 4 to use it in the rain.
Yeah. Well, also
4 is
keep in
for
mind,
swimming.
Samsung has historically had the actual capabilities of their water resistance be much higher um than their rating.
That's true. I mean, back when there was the what was it? It was the Note 5. No, was the 5 the one that exploded, or was that the 7? I can't remember now.
It was the Note 7, I
The
think, that
7. Okay,
exploded.
yeah. So back when the Note 5 was around, I remember using that like in hot tubs and stuff, and not having any issues with it. So
Well, and then there was what I forgot what phone it was, but I think it was a Samsung phone where Linus like had looked at had like scuba dived with it, and it
yeah,
lasted way, way, way deeper than the rating.
yeah, yeah.
Because the thing is that, as you know, OnePlus has often talked about, the equipment to do the rating testings
Hmm.
and the work to do the ratings is expensive, and you have to test every single phone that comes off the production line. It is
Yeah, yeah.
not something where you test the design and then move on.
Right.
And so with headphones, obviously, if you're testing, you know, IPX2, which is like splash resistance, that's relatively easy to test compared to any kind of submergence
Mm-hmm.
testing. And with headphones where you're trying to produce them for $170, you obviously want the testing to be super, super cheap. So
Although
my
I don't know
assumption,
how that testing's actually done because I think they put them in a pressurized tube.
I don't know how IPX2 testing is. I know that with what OnePlus was showing, there was like some significant equipment to do like spraying as well as pressurized testing. My assumption is that
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
different for each rating, though,
Okay, yeah.
because obviously how you would go about testing
Oh, and
products that you're
I'm
not
thinking of watch
expecting to.
ratings too. That's my bad. Watch ratings, they put them in a pressure tube.
Yeah,
That was me thinking backwards. Yeah.
because like since you have to test each individual product as it's coming off the production line, you wouldn't want to test it with something that one out of every 100 it would break. You'd
Yeah,
want to test it with one that you know would be good. And
right.
so if let's say IPX3, realistically 99% of these headphones are,
Mm-hmm. You
that
don't want
doesn't
to
mean they're going to go
overrate.
for that rating. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. So they look interesting. The biggest complaint about them so far is that their active noise canceling is pretty trash. By that I mean like it always is letting in external noise at all times. It's just that the active noise canceling can sometimes drown out things like a bus or maybe a plane. But it sounds like it's really low frequency specific. So on a plane, you'd still probably have some serious annoyances. Um, it could maybe improve. Maybe they're going to be able to do some work on it, but I don't think they're very good at noise isolation. So that also can, I don't know, it just feels like they're that's an area that they're pushing too hard with marketing and is not that good. And that's something I always like to look at a product from is what are they pushing in marketing? And one of the things they marketed a lot was the noise cancellation, but it kind of
Mhm.
sucks. So, eh. And then some of the reviews or people that got hands on more so with it said that they have had some minor Bluetooth connection issues, whereas they never had that with like the Galaxy Buds Plus and the old Galaxy Buds 2 and stuff like that. But these are still early, so that could be fixed. It may not be a hardware issue.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, I wonder if it's something that they might even be able to just fix with a firmware update.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It could be a power saving feature that's being too aggressive or something like that.
Mhm.
Yeah.